So I made a blog post on this topic and I thought it would be useful to make a video for people who don't read my blog or who wanted to kind of know a bit more and have me kind of more visually explain the cycle of anger. The cycle of anger is really important to understand and to know what it is, because if we understand the cycle of anger, we have the power to control our anger response and also to know what our triggers are for kind of our outbursts of anger, aggression, or even rage. So, the cycle of anger usually begins with a triggering event. That is kind of the first piece of this cycle. A triggering event can be anything that provokes us to feel taken for granted, like there's been an injustice, or just generally to feel really kind of agitated in our body and our mind. An example of a triggering event might be someone cut me off while I was driving. Another triggering event might be I came home and none of my dishes were done. And then what happens is that we move on to the second part of our anger cycle. So our triggering event triggers for us negative thoughts, which are often irrational thoughts that are quite often extremely negative. So we might go to a place where someone cuts us off and we think that person did it deliberately, they're trying to get back at me. We might think everyone in our town is a terrible driver and they're awful people. And so we start getting into a really negative spiral of thinking. And when we start having negative thoughts, quite often we ruminate and we have more negative thoughts that kind of build on top of one another and create this really downward negative thought spiral. When we have this negative thought spiral, this leads us to an emotional response. So quite often, what we don't realize is when we have thoughts, we feel a certain way about the thoughts we're having. Whether it be that we feel sad that we're having certain thoughts, or we feel angry about certain thoughts. So in this specific scenario, we are going to feel angry that people don't care about us, that people are such bad drivers, that someone cut us off, and we believe it was deliberate. And this moves us on to our next piece of the anger cycle, which is that we then have our physical body symptoms. So our physical body symptoms are our reaction to our emotional response and our thought response to a trigger that makes us feel angry. The physical body symptoms can be anything from your heart starting to race, you might start sweating, a lot of people even shake or clench their fists when they're angry. And these are just a few examples. But what is happening during this physical body response to our emotion of anger is that we're having adrenaline rush through our body. We're preparing in this moment that we might have to fight. And so, of course, this leads us to the last piece of the anger cycle, which is our behavioral response. So as you can see, our behavior is vastly connected to our thoughts and how we feel about them, because this affects how we feel in our body and eventually how we react. So in this scenario where we're feeling angry, our behavior might be to yell, it might be to argue with someone, it might even be aggressive. So maybe we're even violent when we're angry. Or in the specific example we're using, maybe we're going to go cut other people off just to kind of show that we have power and control over our own driving situation. The reason that it's important to understand the anger cycle is that we can then control our behavior. So if we can stop the anger cycle, not at the trigger, because we're always going to be triggered by things, but if we can stop it at the negative thought part of the cycle and we're able to notice that we're ruminating and we're going to a really negative place of thinking, we can take some control over our emotional reaction and how we feel emotionally, as well as then minimizing the effect in our body. Anger can be a really addictive experience as well when we use our feelings of anger to justify behaviors that are actually rage. It can be a release, and therefore people do get addicted to kind of these explosive episodes of rage. But Anger, while in itself isn't a bad thing, rage is a bad thing. And we want to learn how to take control of our mind and our bodies so that we aren't scaring people, we aren't scaring ourselves, and we're not ruining our own reputation or our lives with kind of these uncontrolled episodes of anger and rage. I will make more videos on the anger cycle and on anger, how to deal with it, and how to kind of control angry feelings and behaviors. But in the meantime, if you'd like to check out my ebooks on mindfulness and kind of learning how to be okay in the present moment, check those out. They have some cognitive behavioral therapy in them and DBT as well. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I will see you next week.